Good morning to the members, to Minister David Maynard, the HOD and the head of the department, as well as all officials joining us. It has gone 9 o'clock, and welcome to this meeting of the Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism. My name is Gillian Bosman and I am the chair of this committee. Before we start with the meeting, I just want to say that I'm going to keep my video off just to ensure that my connection stays stable. I had some issues earlier. And before we go into the introductions of the meeting, I want to start off by recognizing the contribution to the development of the Western Cape economy by the late Mr. David Spicer, the chairperson of Westgrow. As a committee, I'd like to send our heartfelt wishes to his family, his colleagues, and Westgrow family for his contribution, not just to the development of the Western Cape economy, but for his contribution to development overall. He was a towering figure in the business world, and I think his presence is going to be sorely missed. And I want to send the wishes of this committee, and I think the whole of the Western Cape province, to his family during this very difficult time. Colleagues, I'm just going to remind you before we start that we are using the virtual platform for this meeting. I'm going to ask that if you are not speaking, that you please mute yourself. And when you do speak, please feel free to use the video if connection allows. And for members wanting to raise a point of order, please be reminded that you can use the chat function or the raise your hand function. Once again, welcome to this meeting of the Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism, where we will be deliberating vote 12 on the Department of Economic Development and Tourism in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B2 of 2022. I'm now going to hand over to members to please introduce themselves.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, members on the platform. My name is Derek America. I'm a new member of the committee. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Nomi Nkondlo. I'm a member of this committee.
Good morning, Member Nkondlo.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, all. My name is Mireille Wenger. I'm standing in for Honourable Ricardo McKenzie this morning.
Good morning and a very warm welcome, Wenger. Are there any other members online? Okay. So as Member Wenger noted, we've received one apology from Member McKenzie, and Member Wenger is going to be standing in for Member McKenzie. I'm now going to ask the Minister to please lead the introduction of his team joining us this morning. Good morning, Minister Maynard, and welcome.
Good morning. Chairperson, would it be in order for me to make a few opening remarks and then introduce the team?
Yes, you may go ahead, Minister.
Thank you very much. Chairperson, very good morning to yourself and to members of the committee. I really do thank you for your very kind words. and your tribute to Michael Spicer. I also want to congratulate you on your election as chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism. This is the first opportunity for our vote to appear before the committee under your chairpersonship. So congratulations on your election. Chairperson, it obviously gives me great pleasure to present the budget of the Department of Economic Development and Tourism for the 22-23 financial year. The budget, as honourable members will be aware, is about 514 million rand, which is a 2.8% increase in nominal terms, and of course will be directed towards landing our 5 key priorities during the course of the next financial year, which includes ease of doing business, boosting investments and exports, enterprise development, skills development, and of course, energy resilience. I'm joined by Solly Fourie, Head of Department, together with members from the department. And of course, I'm also joined by Renelle Stander from Westgrow, Kashifa Bierkes from the Saldanha Bay IDZ. Chairperson, we do have a short presentation to set the scene. And through you, I would like to hand over to Solly Fourie to introduce the team, and if it is in order with yourself and committee members to take us through the presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for those wishes of congratulations. Minister, I'm very happy with that approach, and I'll hand over to Mr. Fourie, and then once Mr. Fourie's introduced the team, we will then go straight into the presentation as well.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to all the honourable members. Chairperson, I'd like to just share with what Minister Mania has said in congratulating you on your appointment. I hope that, Chair, your period as chair of this committee will be a great one, and will be a great partnership with the department in your oversight role and in leading the committee to keeping us accountable to grow the economy effectively and to drive growth and to drive opportunities for employment. So, Chair, thank you very much, and also to all of the honourable members. Good morning, and I hope we will have a very, very valuable session this morning. Chair, we've got quite a few people who are present through the department. I'm going to just very quickly run through the names so that we know they all are there. If I miss somebody, then I'm going to be very sorry about that. But we've got AJ Trickham. AJ is a director responsible for energy. We've got Alex Ali, a deputy director responsible for our catalytic projects. We've got Ashley Searle, director who's responsible for the Office of the Consumer Protector. Ms. Bianca Maplaja Schiff, she's the chief director responsible for quite a number of things, but largely in the catalytic infrastructure area and the Cape Catalyst area. I've got Cheryl Julish, who's the director responsible for our strategic and operational support. Obviously, we've got the minister who's introduced himself, Doug Southgate, from the Saldanha Bay IDZ. We've got Fairuz Darcy, as director responsible for municipal economic spatial development. Fernal Abrams, Dr. Abrams is also working within the catalytic support area. Then I have Mr. Glenn Steyn, who's a director responsible for the interactions with the Port of Cape Town. He works in the Ease of Doing Business unit. Ms. Helen Davies, who is the energy expert and the chief director. Together with AJ, they do our energy resilience projects. We've got Herman Boerniskans, who's the chief financial officer for the Saldanha Bay IDZ. We've got Shluniswa Matakani, who's in our finance area. Then I've got Ilse Steyn, chief director responsible for sectors, of which includes also tourism. We have Jacinta from Westgrow. There's a lot of people here today, Chair. I'm going to run through them all quickly. I've got Ms. Joanne Johnson, who is the Deputy Director General in the branch Economic Accelerators. We've got John Peters, Chief Director responsible for Ease of Doing Business. Joshua Wolmerans, Director responsible for Enterprise Development. Ms. Kashifa Bukas, the CEO of Saldanha IDZ. Ms. Kuleka Zama, the Chief Financial Officer of Westgrow. I see Lizette Closer, but I'm not quite sure. I'm sure she's with the parliamentary staff. I've got Melissa Parker, who's the Director responsible on skills. Nizam Davis will join us later. Nizam Joseph will join us later. He's busy with a very eminent delegation from overseas coming to look at our BPO offerings. And so Nizam's actually busy there, but Melissa will be standing in and Nizam will join us later. Michelle Ellis, responsible for rate tape reduction, Director in the Ease of Doing Business unit. Ms. Monica Lewell with Westgrow, responsible for tourism. Maimuna Abrams, the Chief Financial Officer of the department. Mr. Patrick Lakabani from the Saldanha IDZ. Pierre Furgas, the CEO of Atlantis SEZ. Priyanka Moodley in our finance department. Rabulani in our energy department. Rashid Tofi, Deputy Director General in the branch economic operations. Wahida Sahib, who's the Chief Financial Officer of the Atlantis SEZ. Ms. Ronelle Stander, the CEO of Westgrow. Yukita Naidu, who is in Ease of Doing Business unit. Chair, that's a whole lot of people that I had to introduce this morning. But the team's very, very committed to be able to work together with the standing committee in your oversight role and to be able to provide the necessary responses to questions that you may have. Chair, if I may just run very briefly through a presentation that we put together just to summarize where we are at. The 70-odd pages in the appropriation bill obviously is a lot of detail, but I think the context is important. And the context in which this department operates, Chair, is within a context of a Western Cape economy that, like the rest of South Africa and like the global economy, has had significant challenges during the 2020-2021 financial year and the 21-22 financial year, and largely because of the struggles we've had with the COVID pandemic. But notwithstanding that, our economy grew last year by 4.3%, and this year it's projected to slow down to 2%. Now, obviously, 2% growth against the backdrop of a large unemployment rate in the country and in the Western Cape, even at an expanded unemployment rate of 30%, which is the lowest by far in the country, it is not a great space to be in. And so we have to stimulate the economy significantly in order to grow business confidence, because the economy can only grow when investors are confident to invest money within an economic system. And so our big drive is to create the environment that makes it possible for investors to invest, and where they believe that the government is open for business and that the government is completely committed to driving an open for business situation. For this financial year that is being reviewed, we have got 5 strategic priorities. And what we have done, Chair and members, is that we've really reprioritized into 5 very, very key focus areas that will enable us to have a Western Cape that is open for business. The first area is making it easier to do business, ease of doing business. And in this area, we've got port efficiencies amongst others. We've got a reduction of red tape amongst others. We've got work that we want to do within the construction sector to make the planning and the approvals a lot easier. We're going to establish a municipal ease of doing business capability, whereby we're going to assist municipalities to drive ease of doing business within their municipalities to get municipal growth. We've got a second priority, which is probably for us where we are spending the most money in our 500 odd million rand budget of boosting investment in exports. If we do not get investments into our economy, if we do not get exports into new markets and into existing markets, if we do not get tourists to come to this area, Chair, we're going to struggle to grow our economy. So we are spending a lot of money in investment in exports through Westgrow, through the Saldanha Bay IDZ, through the Atlantis Special Economic Zone, and through our efforts in making sure that those areas in which we want to grow, like air access, getting people here. That is why it's important for us to get direct flights into this area, and that's what we're doing in the investment and export area. We've got an enterprise development commitment where we really want to enable an easier business environment that empowers both formal and informal small businesses to grow and expand, and we'll talk that through in program 2. We're doing that, a very focused area on enterprise development. The scaling up of work opportunities and skills for people without jobs through accelerating our work placement and skill supply initiatives is very vital for us to get young people, to address that youth unemployment rate and get young people into areas where they've got experiential learning and where in fact firms have an opportunity to take them up permanently. And then energy resilience, Chair, is obviously an area where we are highly committed to create that environment that's conducive for economic growth through energy security. You know, if we do not have firms that can produce in the manufacturing sector with a regular and a consistent supply of energy, it becomes very difficult for people to function. So, Chair, this slide is a very important slide for us, because if we want to have an open for business environment, that campaign of pushing hard for business confidence and open for business, that campaign carries, in fact, is the foundational pillar and the inputs that we get from these 5 key priorities that we want to deliver. Maybe you can just go on with the slide, please. Next slide. Okay. So, of course, we look at this within the context of a very difficult fiscal environment, and a fiscal environment that the department has not been able to necessarily have a great influx of funds into the department, but of course we need to do more with what we've got, and over the years this department has in fact done that. And so we've got a fund of 515 million rand for this financial year, 452 million rand in the next financial year, and 467 million rand in the outer year of the MTIF. Thanks, Marina. You can move on. I'm not going to go through all of the detail, but just a breakdown of where we are with the programs. The administration, obviously, it's keeping the governance and the compliance and all of those kind of areas correct with the CEO, the cost of employees that we have. 60 million is spent there. 56 million is spent in integrated economic development services. In fact, the red tape, the ease of doing business unit is included in program 1. The trade and sector development, 72 million. The business regs, 10 million. The economic planning, 146 million. There's also funds carried in the reserve with provincial treasury with regards to the energy resilience project, which we just put a footnote at the bottom there. Tourism, which is largely funds that is given to Westgrow, 74 million rand, and then of course the skills development, where we are putting an enormous amount of effort in this year to enable young people to get that skills, as a significant contribution of 96 million from that budget. I'm going to just move on. Compensation of employees. Of course, it's important for us to be able to balance the level of employment that we have and where people are spending their skills and time and efforts in the department. And we are moving towards a situation where we are looking at the repositioning of staff in the department to where our priorities are, so that we can spend that 133 million rand on compensation of employees in a very, very effective way to meet the demands of that increased budget allocations for those 5 priorities. We've got 242 posts that's funded. We have not funded all of the posts in our organogram, and so and that largely is because of the budget cuts that we've had overall and the fiscal austerity that we need to apply in making sure that our budgets go further and that we do more with less. And so that's where we are. We've got a lot of transfer payments, so there's a lot of work done in the for the department by agencies and partners. Saldanha by IDZ gets almost 42 million rand. The SEZ gets 39.1 million rand, and Wesco gets 127 million rand, of which 7 million is part of a rollover that we've had for them. The Booster Fund, which is a fund that we are going to provide SMMEs, and again, it's across formal and informal businesses with the opportunity of growing their own businesses and boosting. That's going to get 20 million rand, and the Energy Fund, which is a continuous fund, and the support in reserves in the Provincial Treasury Fund is going to have I think that is our 6.5 million rand in that space. So, Chair, that is where we are at. The skills is a very big part that we're going to have, and so we are going to spend that money in that way. Mamuna, I think at this stage I think we've got a couple more slides, but I think at this stage it's probably important, because it now is the specifics, Chair, and I think for time's sake that we're not going to go through all of that, but allow you then to direct us how you want the committee to ask questions to the department.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fourie. And the presentation has also been sent to all members, so members can also look at that. But the presentation largely covers a lot of the narrative that is in the budget. Members, I'm now going to table for discussion the vote 12, and I'd like us to perhaps in the first round of questions, focus on any questions related to the opening remarks and the presentation, as well as pages 607 to 618, please. If you could give me an indication by using the raise your hand function if you have any questions for that first round. For now, I see Member Wenger. Member Wenger, you may go ahead, followed by Member Nkondlo.
Thank you very much, Chair. The first is on the budget and the MTEF itself. So I see that in the outer years, 23-4 and 24-5, the budget will be significantly less than what is to be appropriated for the current financial year. I'd just like to understand then what is the driver of the expenditure for this upcoming financial year. I assume it's a once-off because the budget then reduces beyond that. And then I have a question on page 610. Under organizational environment in the second paragraph, I see that there's the development of a service delivery model and change management implementation plan on the new way of work. I'd like to understand if that is to try and accommodate working from home and what the implication of that might be on the department. Then my next question is on the same page, which is the Public Service Women in Management meeting. I'm very excited to read about this, and I wonder if the department would be able to tell us more. Who sits on the meeting, what are its goals, and that sort of thing. Then in the bottom paragraph, also very exciting development, to try and influence and become a catalyst to better match skills to jobs in the province, particularly amongst the youth. I'd just like to understand what kind of levers the department has to try and influence and act as a catalyst for that kind of change in skills development. Should I continue, Chair? I have a few more questions on those pages.
Yes, you may. Please go ahead.
Okay. Then on page 615, we're talking about exports. I know the department has assisted in the Port of Cape Town, especially with the container terminals. But I'd just like to ask, more broadly speaking, with the global shipping crisis that obviously affects Cape Town and our ports and our exports, is there anything that we could do provincially to try and assist our local businesses with better transport for their exports, given the crisis and the difficulties that companies are experiencing? I'll stop there, Chair. Did you say it's up to page 118?
It's up to page 618, yes.
Okay, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Wenger. I now see Member Nkondlo.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, which helps us in terms of highlighting areas in those plus 70 pages, which I would appreciate if such a presentation could be shared with us, notwithstanding that it's the same information that is in those in the book. Having said that, Chair, firstly, I just wanted to understand from the Minister and the HOD. This is one question that I've been trying to understand from the other departments also, that the announcements made by the Premier and also anchored in the budget speech about the reconfiguration to try and give a kick to the economy through the infrastructure and I think the mobility and others. Are there any specific impact to this particular department, given that this department is supposed to drive economic planning, is supposed to drive and give ideas around economic growth? So I'm interested to understand if such a pronouncement on the reconfiguration is something that is affecting or will affect this department and its programs. If so, in which area, and what are the budgetary considerations thereof? And broadly, what's the role of this department in that whole approach to economic growth of the provincial economy? So that's one thing I would like to get clarity on. Secondly, to both the Minister and HOD, HOD said there's a lot of work that they will be doing this year also in the informal sector. I was left still listening what exactly is that work that will be done in the informal sector. And once again, what is the tangible strategic work that leads to the type of programs and projects that this department is doing around the informal sector? And I'm raising this, Chair, because when I was listening to the 5 priorities presented by the HOD, one does not see, you see there and there reference on these priorities, to informal sector in the municipal ease of doing business. I'm not sure what that is. And interestingly, I think yesterday in both provincial treasury and local government, one was trying to understand this as one of the priorities that support the policy priorities of government around jobs, that there is this issue about municipal ease of doing business. One is interested, what exactly is that? I hear the side on the construction to enable, I'm sure, and support the infrastructure work, which is not something new. It has been there. I think in the previous years, we've talked about how I think there has been enablement around building plans and the speed at which now those are being done. But what are some of the issues that are actually being dealt with in this ease of doing business? Because I think whilst one appreciates opening up the economy, trying to get investors, I worry that in the interpretation, it seems that our interest is always more biased, in getting investors into the economy, but there is little same zeal that is put in also the domestic economy's capability, because I think that is also important to balance the two, that investors, when they come in, that benefit is always not going to be optimally leveraged if our local economy is not necessarily enabled to take up the opportunities. So you're creating an uneven relationship where the most benefit will always be the investors more than those that are in the local economy. So that is why I'm asking this question, because I'm interested in this area, just across the formal economy, but particularly the informal economy. And we've been raising this matter. The HOD is aware of this. The minister is aware of this around some of the bylaws, which is the regulatory framework that is highly rigid and stringent for informal sector in the municipalities. And I am not sure what work is being done. Yesterday, local government said there's some work that this department is doing. And I'm not sure how is the department working with local government around this, around the regulatory environment, but also what in particular in as far as ease of doing business, so that we can see the balance being there, because indeed one is supportive of growing the economy, and the economy mustn't grow for a certain sector of the economy, particularly those that are in the formal sector, because the reality is that not everybody is in there. And if you look at our poverty and inequality, until we are deliberate to those who are falling out of the cracks of the formal economy, then we are just ignoring a reality that is sitting with us. So I'm trying to understand that. Again, when we speak about the skills pipeline, for me, I'm interested in this thing of the skills pipeline and the skills supply chain, because in the previous experiences, one of the things that the same department will come and tell us is how, with the beautiful targets, with the beautiful energy around skills development, is actually some of the challenges. One is funding, which they would always relate as a delay from national government, this and the other, in terms of paying, particularly from the SETA funds and related skills-related funds. Have that, in this instance, been resolved? Number two, the private sector participation, because as would know, or as would hear the reports, that speaks to the reality of ensuring that whilst these learners get into the program, they also need experiential learning or on-site learning, which at most reside with the private sector. So have those issues, can we be guaranteed this time around that indeed the targets that are set would actually be delivered upon and even go beyond, because indeed some of these historic challenges in as far as the skilling intentions are concerned and objectives are concerned, at least those issues have been resolved. And my last one on this one, Chair, is on this energy resilience project for this round, is that I'm interested to know that to date, how much have we spent on this municipal energy resilience project? I understand in the budget adjustment we did late last year, I think we had that some of the money, I think in the green economy, could not be used, and the money was put back to the Provincial Revenue Fund, which I hear, I'm assuming it's what the HOD is referring to those, the monies that were kept for spend in this year. So I'm trying to understand how much, since we've started pronouncing this project, how much has been spent here, and has any of those projects at this point, or we still in the studies, feasibility, and all of that, has anything have actually come into stream, and any potential megawatts that have gone into the grid or still to go into the grid? If still to, can we get an indication by when in terms of those studies is that, and what is the cost per unit of these varied actually energy sources that we are actually getting outside, you know, of the current ESCOM supply? So if one can just get to understand, I think broadly these issues, and particularly in the energy resilience. Let me stop there for now, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Member Nkondlo. Member America.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, my question relates to one skills development. Quite a substantial appropriation is made for development of skills, and I'd like to know whether those skills development initiatives that are planned, whether they speak to the strategic objectives of the department, and secondly, to what extent is it being decentralized in the various sort of districts, because we know that there are, for various reasons, a higher uptake of individuals within the metropolitan areas to make use of these developmental opportunities. So, and secondly, the Department of Transport and Public Works also has an extensive skills development and retention strategy. Is there in any way alignment or cooperation to enable us to have greater synergy in terms of developing the broad range of skills that economy of the Western Cape might need? And then secondly, Chair, as far as the booster fund is concerned, 20.571 million rand has been appropriated for that. And that's on page 636. Now, table 8.4, there are a number of small and medium-term enterprises listed that were funded in the past, that for some reason they will not be funded in this financial year. And the only organization that will receive funding is the Western Cape Economic Development Partnership. Now, as a new member of this committee, I'm not very familiar with the Western Cape Economic Development Partnership. So my question is whether that 20.571 million rand and the 13.2 million rand appropriated to the Western Cape Economic Development Partnership, does it form part of the 20 million rand? And there's just a paltry 2 million plus million rand that is being earmarked for transfers to municipality. Could we speak to that. And perhaps lastly, what are the reasons for the discontinuation of the funding of some of these other projects, because there are quite a number of it, and certainly we are budget constrained, and some of them may not qualify, but maybe I can get more clarity on that, Chair. Thank you for now.
Thank you very much, Member America. So just to add to that last round, if perhaps the Minister or the HOD could perhaps elaborate more on what the impact of the inaction by the National Minister of Transport on the bilateral air agreement has been on the Western Cape recovery plan, specifically the delay in approving the request from Delta Airlines. What has that done to our tourism recovery plan specifically? And then if they could also perhaps expand a bit more on the successes of the Tourism Product Development Fund and tell us what the plans are going forward for that specific category. And then also if we can get some understanding of what collaboration is happening with national government to further strengthen the Port of Cape Town, and specifically also to prevent future incidences of cyber attacks on the port, which significantly delays its operations. And then also in terms of the department on page 614, the department's collaboration sector, and also the property development tool around sort of land use planning. What collaboration is happening with municipalities as well to make sure that bottlenecks in development planning and specifically land use planning applications are streamlined and strengthened? That's one of the core concerns of the Western Cape property industry. So with all of those questions, which is quite a lot, I'm going to hand over to the Minister and the department for responses. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive set of questions. I'm going to hand over to the Solly Fourie and the team for responses, and I will then supplement a few of the Chairperson. I just want to confirm I'm audible.
Yes, you are, Minister.
Thank you. And I just want to confirm, did you hear my last remark?
I think you dropped there for a minute. If you could just repeat that.
I'll just repeat my last remark. I'll hand over to Solly Fourie and the team for responses to the questions, and I will then supplement responses as required. Thank you.
That is in order with me. I'm just going to also ask Member Nkondlo and Member America if you could lower your hands, because at the moment it looks like you would like to make a point of order. So I'll hand over to the HOD.
Thank you very much, Chair. I hope we've captured all of the questions as we went along. What is the driver for the first question from Member Wagner? What is the driver for the 2022-2023? Well, the 514 and then the reduction in the outer years. Essentially, of course, we obviously have to add inflationary figures on most of our things going up, but the big reduction is that for the 2022-2023 year, it is the last year that we fund operational funding to the Saldanha Bay IDZ. And in the 2023-2024 year, the Saldanha Bay IDZ operational funding, which is standing at, and I just want to get 610, I think it is, I think the amount is about 40 million or 42 million. That will then be reduced, and therefore you'll see that kind of large reduction in the second and in the third outer year of the MTIF. I'm sure the CFO will correlate and check that if I've given the right explanation for that. Service delivery model and a different way of work. Obviously, the new way of work is a matter that is being discussed at a integrated Western government perspective. But a new way of work also speaks about, for this department, that where we now have had prioritization focuses, then the reassignment of people within the department who are currently in an organic structure, organogram structure, where that work that is being done has now been deprioritized, that those people now become available for reassignment within a management agreement or a service delivery model that is going to pick up all of those kind of nuances. The service delivery model for this department has not yet been finalized, and it is a piece of work that needs piece of work that is currently being done by the Organizational Design Chief Directorate in the Department of the Premier, and we hope that that will be something that we will have answers on soon. I'm going to ask Cheryl Julies to respond to the public service women in management question. The last paragraph on 10, the better matching of skills to jobs. I think it's a very important area that we are working on with private sector. And I think it's one of the issues that this department has over the years invested an enormous amount of time and effort, is to speak to private sector and to speak to business and to hear from business what the issues are. What we currently have, and I'm sure Nizam in answering some of the skill questions later on, what we currently have in our economy is a significant reduction in demand for skills and jobs. In other words, to not have an economic jargon, many firms are very reluctant to employ people, and that for a number of reasons. And so the work that we do in the department is to enable young people to understand what the levels of skills are which are in demand, and then to help them within that process to narrow to narrow the gap between what's demanded and what is supplied. And that's the big role that we're playing in that space. And what levers do we have? It's exactly that. It's a coercing lever. It's a negotiation lever. It's a speaking to lever. It's working hard with, for instance, the BPO sector to be able to pick up a lot of young people and to do the experiential learning so that they can go into full-time employment. It's understanding, and a project that we've just completed in the West Coast, where 28 young ladies of Atlantis and Pella and Dunoon were trained from a stipend paid by this department to be code 10 and code 14 truck drivers. Now, it's that which changes lives completely, and that's the program that we work on. Where's the need, and how do we enable young people to be skilled to go into that need approach? So that's the one there. The Port of Cape Town, I know we're going to spend a couple of hours with that one, but essentially it is a challenge, and it was a challenge that has been exacerbated throughout COVID. It's been carrying on, and now it's also being affected by the global crisis within shipping and the delays that we are having. But there are some questions later on which I'm going to ask specifically Glenn Stein to respond on. And Member Wengner, if Glenn can probably pick up that question in his answer as well. On the informal sector, Member Nkondlo, I know we've been traversing this for quite a few years, or quite a few occasions, and I'm going to ask Joshua just to specifically talk on informality within an SMME space, and I want John Peters to speak about the municipal ease of doing business and the impact that the reduction of red tape in municipalities will have on informal businesses. So if we can just do those two, and then I'll go back to the infrastructure question, and I'll ask John to touch on the infrastructure question that you've asked as well. And then I'll go back to the balancing of support for attracting new investment and continuing to support local economic stakeholders, and that balance between the two. Joshua, can you maybe just handle informal sectors on an SMME level, and John on the ease of doing business side, if that's okay with you, Chair?
So thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Solly. So in terms of the informality, and also I think dealing with informal business, I think there's been constantly an attempt by the department to deal with the informal sector. And as was indicated earlier, and also as part of the response to the informal sector, and one of the mechanisms also used was via the SMME Booster Fund, where the fund is open to assist both formal and informal businesses in making sure that they become compliant, and we develop the capacity of those particular businesses. In addition, what the department is also doing is engaging with different government departments around the issues of compliance, ensuring that businesses that are not compliant becomes compliant, able to, for example, take up opportunities through government tender processes and stuff like that. The other issue around informality is also that the department has had, and especially linked to the COVID-19 funding that was available by the department, is to make sure that businesses in the informal sector is able to access those funding opportunities, looking at reducing the kind of criteria for application and making sure that it doesn't become too onerous on those businesses to access funding opportunities. The department also works quite closely with organizations such as both CEDA and CIFA to assist your informal type businesses to take up opportunities such as your TREP program from the Department for Small Business Development. So there's resources that is available both at national level as well. So the idea for us, for the department, is through the partnership arrangement, ensure that we push and drive and assist organizations such as CEDA and CIFA to assist and support small businesses to take up those particular opportunities in the Western Cape. One of the key things that we have, for example, with CEDA at the moment, is also to look at supporting businesses in the Garden Route area, and through a partnership between ourselves, the department, and CEDA, as to assist both businesses, both formal and informal businesses, in that specific areas, to try and assist them to either become formalized or access opportunities that is available. So, Chair, just as a response, so it is a priority for the department and a focus area, and it's through a range of initiatives within the department, but I think also more importantly, working with the outside stakeholders such as your CEDAs and your CIFAs to try and assist businesses in that particular regard, especially in terms of our relationship with the Small Enterprise Development Agency. Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Solly.
Thanks, Josh. John, will you pick up the one on municipal ease of doing business and informality, and then also infrastructure support for construction?
Okay, thank you very much, Solly, and thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for the question. Maybe just some context to the ease of doing business. Look, previously we were very much focused in terms of case resolution, and then also looking at issues on a provincial and national level, working very much with DSBD on the higher level issues. For this year, for the coming years, we decided to focus a lot more. And we've broken up our sort of focus areas into three parts. The first one being the municipal support. Okay. The second one being looking at the culture transformation within the Western Cape government in terms of officials becoming more business centric. So in other words, by being more business centric, you become more innovative and you improve the services to businesses. Second one. And the third one is our advocacy role in terms of regulatory reform, be that on any sphere of government. Okay, so those are the three things. If we focus and if we look at what our allocation has been in terms of the budget allocation, we've put a huge amount of funding to the municipal space. Okay, not that we haven't any funding for the other two, but the other two would be made up in terms of resources, human resources. Let's just focus then on the municipal space. What have we been doing the past, I want to say 5, 6, 7 years? We started, I think, a generally hugely successful program with regard to business not business plan, building plan control or building control, where I think, Speak Under Connection, we assisted about 23 municipalities to digitize their systems, whether that be a front end or a back end, or some actually did both. So we looked at improving that as a business facing services. We also looked at 1 or 2 municipalities with regard to event permitting and phone permitting. That's what we've done there. In addition to those projects that we were busy with, there was also constant engagement with municipalities, especially the LED officials, with regard to ease of doing business. How do you improve your relationship and your interfaces with business, right? So that's what we've been doing there. For the coming years, what we've, besides allocating that 10 million rand as a support to municipalities, we've done it a lot different, in that we do realize that we need a far more integrated approach and strategy to municipalities. So what we've done for the past, I want to call it month, we had extensive engagements with the following organizations, with SALGA, and here we've got an agreement with them of how we're going to take things collaboratively forward in terms of not only working together, but actually finalizing a index that will look at measuring municipalities in terms of the improvements of their services, including the informality part. Also, we've had discussions with COGTA, and we're gonna have a collaborative arrangement with them. And then obviously our normal partners being DSP, Department of Small Business, and our own Department of Local Government with regard to the bylaws. So that partnership, we are managed to cement that partnership as we go forward. So what were the projects that we currently busy with that we're also going to be taking forward? Last year, we started I want to say it's quite successful, the ECD projects, where we looked at ECDs who were at the cusp of becoming registered. Now, just bear in mind that if these ECDs are registered, automatically the standards for everyone goes up. Number one, they get formal funding from social services and donor funding. Secondly, the curriculum improves, which means you have better skills development of our kids, especially in the township. And then obviously you have decent unemployment. So the ECD project, which we'll be carrying forward, is a specific project that we've done with regard to especially township businesses, right? When we call them township business, because that's what they actually, they might be social businesses, but they're actually businesses. So we've committed support for that, but specifically now in this case, not project money in terms of getting them up to speed, getting their fire certificates out, but what we're looking at now is looking at how do we improve those regulations or those bylaws that will make it easier for these organizations to start and actually grow and not become hidden from mainstream business activity. So our huge focus is going to be on regulatory reform with regard to ECDs. Now, maybe just taking a step back. As we embarked on this, I want to call it more than a month worth of collaboration, we spoke to the following organizations. We spoke to municipalities, the officials, and sometimes you even had a mayor coming in. We also spoke to MMs, okay? We spoke then also to corporate businesses, the bigger businesses, but importantly, we spoke to organized business, the AHI, which represent a huge component of business chambers there. And the other important component that we spoke to was SAITA, South African Informal Traders Association. And what came out of that discussion is the issue of planning with regard to township businesses, right? That not only came from example SAITA, it also came from the officials, right? And obviously from the chambers of commerce. So for next year, we're going to have a huge focus on how do we look, and this is part of what we actually done. We just had a meeting yesterday with the staff, that bylaws is one of the issues that municipalities actually have control over in terms of unlocking the potential, especially of our township areas. So I think in a nutshell, what is our strategy? Our strategy is, first of all, integrated. Okay, but looking specifically, unlike what Josh is looking in terms of enterprise support, we're looking at the regulatory aspects and how do we improve the regulatory aspects, okay, in collaboration with notable role players such as SALGA, COCTA, DSBD, local government, and importantly, the municipality. So for going forward, I think we've got a small team. Our focus will be on specifically the ECDs. That's the first one. Secondly, it will also be then on regulatory reform in a context in terms of planning, not only for almost your formal businesses, but importantly for your informal businesses in the township areas. Yeah, I think there might be more questions on that one, and I was clear on trying to explain that part. The other issue that came up was on the infrastructure planning, and I'll just start off and hand over to Michelle, who's the newly appointed director, and it will be a maiden speech for the standing committee. Just to elaborate on that, I think if we look at the PDIA process that we've been going through, we focus on the city of Cape Town, okay, just to not only as a learning exercise, but to actually get to grips with the regulatory and procedural and systemic issues, right? The learning has been steep, okay, just in terms of example, regulatory impact assessments, where we sort of pushing with the city of Cape Town to almost mainstream that you just don't have new laws being added, but that also that before you add a law or a regulation, you actually also have, do you need it, and also to what extent will it be conducive to small business or general business development. So there's been a lot of learnings on that one. There's the network is also broadened in that we've got, through the PDIA, we've managed to have excellent contacts with our sister department, which is Environmental Affairs and Planning, which looks at the EIAs and stuff like that. But importantly, we on the cusp of finalizing some sort of agreement with the Department of Water Affairs to look at water use licenses, which would also be part of the PDIA exercise. We have been doing some work in the nothing specifically construction space, in the planning phase space, but I'll hand over that to Michelle just to explain this year's projects in terms of the direct project funding that we've allocated to municipalities in terms of improving planning and obviously land use. Michelle, thank you.
Thank you, John. Good morning, Chair and all members. So in the current financial year, we had a call for proposals specifically for municipalities in the construction and development sector. We managed to provide direct funding for 4 municipalities in order to digitize 7 processes affecting the development sector, being Knysna, George, Drakenstein, as well as Hessequa municipalities. Don't know if I have to provide any more detail on that, but yeah, that's it. Thank you, John.
Sorry, Michelle, maybe just give some details on the projects?
Okay, so for Knysna, it was the development and compilation of our online heritage resources inventory. And all of these projects are has the objective of streamlining development applications in order to ensure more efficient approvals. Then in Hessequa municipality, it was the development of a GIS system for the building control and town planning, and this is to ensure a seamless integrated system between the financial valuation, the zoning registers, as well as the building control. In George, it was the expansion of the building control modules that the department funded a few years ago with 4 additional automated processes, namely the land use applications, the permits required for development in the Outeniqua sensitive coastal areas, the registration for the lease and alienation of municipal owned property, as well as the rates clearance certificates. Then in Drakenstein, it was also the development of an online integrated property development application tool. And which one am I missing? I think I mentioned all of it: Drakenstein, George, Hessequa, and Knysna. Yeah, sorry, John. Yeah, that's the 4 municipalities as well as the processes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle and John. I'm now going to proceed, Chair, to Honourable Member Nkondlo's question on which I'm phrasing the balance of support to attraction of new investment versus the support to existing businesses or existing economic stakeholders. Now, of course, it's a really, really good question that Member Nkondlo is asking. And the balance between getting new capital into your economy, which then feeds the growth of the economy, and sustaining existing economic stakeholders, it's an exceptionally difficult and delicate balance that you've got to maintain all the time. And so in the work that the department does through its funding of investment attraction and funding of export promotion, investment attraction feeds the trying to get new businesses into the economy and have existing businesses expand their business. I mean, this is the work that the Ease of Doing Business unit is doing, making it easier for a local property developer to be able to expand their business quicker because the bylaws and the planning is going to go smoother, to the work that Westgro and Saldanha Bay IBZ and Atlantis SEZ does in attracting new investment to then have new capital coming into the economy and employing more people. So that's an important part. But the work that Joshua does in supporting SMMEs, in supporting businesses, that's the commitment that we have for existing stakeholders. The energy resilience project that we are spending an enormous amount of money on, that's to make it easier for existing economic users of energy to have a more reliable source of energy for their manufacturing, for instance. And so when we do this balance, Member Nkondlo, it is a balance of how do we take our budget envelope that we have and not only spend everything on investment attraction, but also how do we safeguard existing businesses to grow and expand. And so I'm very much of the belief that we are doing exceptionally well on both sides with the envelope that we have. Skills development is not only something that we say we're going to give or we're going to support young people with new skills. It's also to strengthen existing businesses. So the existing businesses are now able to employ a more skilled force, a higher skilled capacity. And so they can also have bigger production or better production in order to grow their businesses. So I think that balance is something that this budget reflects and that this budget actually displays, and that we are doing it in a way that I think pleases both sides. The skills pipeline, I'm going to ask Nizam to respond on that, to also then include in that Honourable Member America's question on the skills area, which you've asked. And on the energy side, I'm going to ask Joanne Johnson to respond to the energy question. But of course, Joe will be able then to also call upon AJ and Helen to support her in her answers. And then I know we've got two questions, one question from Member Wenger, which we didn't answer. That was on the public service women in management, which I know Cheryl Julius is going to respond. And Member Nkondlo's question with regards to the announcements of the Premier in the SOPA for the establishment of an infrastructure department. I think that one, I'm sure that one, together with the question on the bilateral inaction at a national level on particularly airlines or the air travel, that I'm sure Minister and I will pick up, and I'll give Minister the first bite at that cherry. So let's take it like that. So I'm going to call on Nizam to answer the skills question, Joe and her team on the energy to respond to the energy question, and then Cheryl to respond on the public service women in management question, Chair, if that's okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, HOD, and thank you for the members for the questions. So firstly, I do want to sort of support the HOD on aggregate. There are cases where we've seen there is a decline in overall demand, but certain sectors in the economy has shown significant skills shortages. Sectors like BPO. In fact, I'm at a BPO event right now where we have 15 international investors that wants to put down another 3,000 jobs in the city. So sectors like BPO, logistics, home delivery, we've seen shortages in capacity in those particular sectors, but on aggregate, there is a decline in demand. Right, and then obviously using a skills instrument, which is a supply instrument, in stimulating demand, one has to be very discerning in how one does that, because in many instances, like tourism, for example, a skills supply side instrument is very impotent. Yeah. So the first is, I think there was a question around sort of systemic and how we respond to the demand. So as a program, we have both a systemic response and then an immediate job creation response. On the systemic side, we not only develop new qualifications or degrees, but we also look at new modalities in giving expression to those degrees, given within the context of changing trends within the sector. With respect to immediate job creation, we've got our experiential learning projects, which is probably one of the cheapest job creation instruments we've seen, and certainly in the country at this point. Just to give you a sense of how successful we have been in skills, about 95% of all the individuals that finishes our experiential learning programs were offered permanent employment or further employment, of which 92% then accepted. Last year, we did over 4,500 beneficiaries, and we're on track to do sort of a similar amount this time around. Obviously, as a department, in the main, we fund experiential learning, and we get private sector and other public sector institutions to fund the skills component. We've been very successful in that regard. Last year, for every R1 the department has voted for skills, we will crowd in another R2 from other sources. This year, it will probably be a bit higher than that. So last year, we crowded in 105 million. This year, it will be, we are hoping that it will be significantly more than that. Right. Then from a collaboration perspective, we have strong collaborations, both interdepartmental. We have an at-home project where we collaborate with a number of departments, such as the Department of Education and Social Development. And we use our experiential learning program to provide that experiential learning, at the same time strengthening the outcomes of other departments. With respect to our national collaboration, many of our funding, crowding funding, comes from national sources. In fact, we're busy with because we had this increase in allocation for funding in this financial year, we are engaging with a national entity, and we probably will crowd in another R100 million for skills and leverage our funds in that particular way. There was a question around how we prioritize skills and the companies. Well, we have a tool, and key to that is what those companies can give to our beneficiaries. It's not a qualitative exercise, it's a very quantitative exercise. And key to that is the percentage of our learners which companies will offer permanent employment to, the qualifications that they will impart on those particular individuals. So it's not only experiential learning. With respect to alignment to the overall strategy, about 95% of everything we do is actually about probably close to 100%, well, between 95 and 100% is aligned to the tradable sector. There are a small number of areas where it's not aligned, and that's when we have this collaboration with other departments like the Department of Education or Social Development, where we use experiential learning to support those. With respect to the CETAs and the CETA collaborations, in the main, lots of those challenges has been addressed in terms of timeous movement of funds from a Program 7 skills development perspective, but we do experience other challenges. One of the challenges is that some of the CETAs expects the department to be a lead employer. Now, obviously, our regulations don't allow us to be so. So in one or two cases, we have given, or in the process of giving money back to the SETA, because those SETAs expect us to be a lead employer, and we cannot obviously fulfill that particular role in that particular manner. HOD, I think I answered all of those questions. If I missed anything, please let me know.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Nizam. Joe, can you pick up the energy response, please?
Certainly, HOD. With regards to the energy in the MER project, to date, 18.9 million rand has been spent on the MER project, of which 20% has been sent or transferred directly through to the municipalities to support them in project preparation. And in the energy space, there's quite a lot of regulatory requirements that municipalities need to fulfill before they can procure. And so this money that was transferred to the municipality directly assists the municipalities to get things like cost of supply studies and their IRPs in place, the integrated resource plans in place, so that they are able to procure renewable energy projects to assist with the load shedding, or reduce the impact of load shedding on the municipalities within the Western Cape. I think it's also quite important to note that project preparation work generally and traditionally costs between 5 to 12% of the total value of the project. And I think this is quite important to make sure that we have least risk in terms of procurement, and that we procure very wisely in terms of infrastructure, because making mistakes is incredibly expensive and costly, particularly if you end up with stranded assets that one isn't able to maximize or utilize. So the work that we are doing in the project prep is really important, because it sets the groundwork and the foundation to allow for all municipalities to procure once. Particularly, we do the pilot projects, and either municipalities can then simply copy the sort of pathway that we have carved out. So I think that is quite important to note. Then with regards to what we've done thus far, there's been 49 megawatts of energy, particularly with regards to registered rooftop PV that has gone onto roofs in businesses and households as a result of the energy work that we have done. And then, of course, in part because of the support that we provide to private sector, 7 projects, or essentially nearly 800 megawatts of projects, have been successfully landed in the Western Cape. So 16 of the 25 projects have been won by Cape Town-based energy developers for the bid window 5. With a further 5 project developers also having offices in the West Cape. So by and large, if you look at the renewable energy industry, the Western Cape basically is the headquarters for South Africa for these companies. Thank you. I think that was really all the questions. That was also, oh, the other one was, what was the cost of PV? What was the cost of the unit? So obviously, with regards to the PV, it's essentially private sector that pays for it. We provide the support and the enabling environment to allow for that to happen. And we've done that with the wheeling work and the feeding tariff regulations and bylaws that we have assisted municipalities to actually have in place that allows for that. But generally, in terms of costs, PV costs between 755 to 800 megawatts, depending on the scale and the timelines, and onshore wind is between 850 to 890 rand megawatts. But again, and there are escalating costs for biomass, etc., etc. But we can certainly happy to provide specifics through to the standing committee if they have additional questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Joe. Chair, we've now got three questions that's still outstanding from my side. The one is which Honourable Member Wenger asked about the public service women in management, and I'm going to ask Cheryl Julius to respond to that one. Then we had two questions on the Port of Cape Town. One is the shipping crisis, which I tried to respond to, and the other one was about the collaboration with national government with regards to the Port of Cape Town, and particularly, of course, the work we're doing with Transnet on that, which I'll ask Glenn to respond to. And then there was the question on, which I assumed was Delta Airlines, and the bilateral partnership and the inaction we had there. And then the announcements of the Premier, which I'm sure Minister is going to tackle going forward. I think there was a further question on, there was one on success of the Tourism Product Development Fund that I'm going to ask Ilse or Rashid to respond to. So I'm going to start with Cheryl, then Glenn, then Rashid on the Tourism Development Product Fund, and then between Minister and I will take the other two questions. Thanks.
So good morning, everyone. The question pertaining to the Public Service Women in Management meeting that was asked. So this is an annual meeting that used to take place in August in Women's Month, where we had the Public Service Women in Management meeting. But what we have identified over the period of time was the gap in order to further discuss issues emanating from those meetings. And as a result of that, we have developed the Gender Equality Forum within the department. And the forum mainly discussed the issues that comes from the public service meeting, but also addressing issues such as sexual harassment, looking at women in leadership, and mainly specifically putting processes and plans in place to see how we can empower women more and stop like mentoring and coaching that came from it, but also looking at the policy environment, how we can look at the policy environment to make it more gender mainstreaming, to see that the policy does not hamper maybe women or even youth or even the vulnerable group that we have that we are addressing in those particular areas. Some of the issues that also came out was also linked to the just topics such as the sexual harassment, where we unpack sexual harassment and putting plans in place. So the forum is actually been created so that we can give a little bit of feedback and also further deliberate on some of the issues that comes from the Gender, Women and Management meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Cheryl. So I'm going to ask Glenn if you can maybe just report back on the collaboration work we're doing with Transnet in the Port of Cape Town and any of the challenges that, we did deal with the shipping line crisis. So it's the collaboration work with Transnet and National.
Thank you, Solly, and morning, Chair and members and Minister. Chair, I think it will probably be fair to say there was a significant leadership gap in the port logistics chain that Minister Mania filled the gap very effectively, and he mobilized a departmental response. So we started with collaboration, building networks between all the different agencies, and we're now in the fortunate position that we can translate that strong collaboration, a willingness to work together into action. And Chair, I would say, coming to Member Wenger's question, that the most critical issue where department, through advocacy and through collaboration and through backup support, can assist to make transport of cargo more efficient, is to reduce the turnaround time of vessels in the Port of Cape Town. And that would be waiting time to berth and time at berth. Those two indicators are the most essential in determining whether a shipping line services a port or bypasses a port. So although that's a complex issue, I would imagine that, and I want to argue that equipment adequacy would be probably the most critical in determining your vessel turnaround time. So what we are agitating for, working within this port logistics space, is the augmentation of cranes and better incentives for operators when they work on their cranes to get the performance levels up. And on the equipment, in addition to the cranes, there's some work being done to mitigate weather risks, which you will be aware are quite significant in Cape Town, especially in terms of wind speeds and ranging that moves the ship at berth. So hydraulic tensioners have just been installed to reduce the ranging, and we are anticipating some interventions to improve the equipment fleet soon. There's already been one mobile crane delivered to the multi-purpose terminal, which is having a significant effect, although that is a relatively small terminal. So, Chair, I think I will pause there for now to say that there are interventions and there is hope for an improvement, but there are significant delays, especially with global disruptions, and those are driving up the cost of doing business, which is something that we are trying to assist with almost on a daily and an hourly basis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Rashid, can I hand over the Tourism Product Development Fund to you? And then Bianca, there was a question on Western Cape Economic Development Partnership, which I wanted you to respond to. Thanks, Rashid.
Thanks, HOD. And Chairperson, I think you were the one who asked that question. As we've worked on economic recovery during COVID and post-COVID, it was really important to, in addition to driving demand of tourists, was to stabilize the supply side. And tourism is all about experiences. It's products and experiences, and that's what you sell when you get out there and you're marketing. So we spent in the last 2 years, we spent 8 million rand on this project, and we leveraged an additional 15. So that was a very powerful element of the project, and 400 jobs were created, both direct and indirect, which is again very from a value for money point of view, that's about 20,000 rand a job, and these are sustainable jobs as well. All 15 of the projects took place outside of the metro areas. That was our particular emphasis because we felt that's where the money needed to be spent, and we made an effort to support SMMEs in local areas and really to drive all of the spend into those areas. So unfortunately, due to sort of reprioritization, we're not funding the project going forward. Thanks, HOD.
Thank you, Rashid. Then the other outstanding question was the Western Cape Economic Development Partnership. But I think before Bianca responds to that, I think Honourable Member America did ask the question that there was a number of areas where we had funded in the past and we are no longer funding them. Member America, the answer there is that most of that funding was done up to the end of the 21 financial year. And you'll notice also in the 21-22 financial year, there were fewer areas where we funded. In fact, there were 3 that we funded in that area. And then for this financial year now, we're only funding the 1 area. And it's largely because of the reprioritization of the funding away from multiple areas of small impact to broader areas of significant impact. And that's a strategic decision that we took in the department that I specifically drove to say, we've got to fund those 5 priorities in an adequate way in order to give maximum impact to those. And so you'll see that is where we've moved to for the 2022-2023 financial year. But I'm going to ask Bianca just to respond to the question that you had on the 13.2 million rand for the EDP. Thanks, B.
Thank you, HOD. I think just to point out that the EDP's partnership initiatives are in support of municipalities, so it's not separate to. They have 4 key areas that they support. The one is direct projects that they do with the municipalities, and for next year they will be focusing on the Garden Route and the City of Cape Town because those municipalities have requested their direct assistance on projects. They also have water and economic recovery, where they try to build the ecosystem around water resource efficiency and savings, and making sure that our water levels can be sustained. They also work on food and economic recovery. Here, they specifically work with area-based stakeholders to enable food security, but also to enable better value chains around food. And then, of course, they have the collaborative practices for economic recovery and growth, again, where they try to support all levels of government and spheres of government to collaborate better towards economic recovery and growth. So their funding shouldn't be seen as something in competition to the municipality, but rather in support of municipalities and other stakeholders to effect growth between themes and priorities.
Thank you, Bianca. Chair, the other two questions was on the airlines. So it's the impact of the inaction on the bilateral partnerships on the airlines. And I know Minister would be probably best suited to answer that particular one. And I know, Minister, if you also want to refer to the infrastructure question that was asked earlier.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I think there are three questions I'd like to respond to. The first is on the institutional review. And the question there, as I understood it, was much more, what is the impact likely to be on our Department of Economic Development and Tourism? The institutional review, of course, is ongoing, and I think the implications for the department will obviously become clear during the next financial year, but will focus, I believe, on much more on how the cluster is coordinated, and rather than, for example, on the amalgamation of departments. So the work is ongoing. It will, I think, become clear what the implications are in the next financial year, but I believe that it will focus much more on how the cluster is coordinated within the Western Cape government. And I certainly look forward to ensuring that the committee is kept abreast of developments on the institutional review and its implications for the department and for the cluster. On the whole question of Delta Airlines, I have now, I put out a public statement yesterday, I've reinstituted the intergovernmental dispute. The matter, as committee members know, has been ongoing for quite some time, for just more than 6 months. And Wesgro did do some high-level calculations on what the impact might be and determined that, you know, this delay could have cost the economy up to about 420 million rand. So the latest state of play is the intergovernmental dispute has been reinstituted. It was reinstituted yesterday. It is, of course, frustrating that we have not managed to resolve this issue, but I do remain confident that in the next few weeks we will finally resolve this matter with the National Department of Transport. In the meantime, of course, members may be aware that Delta Airlines have made application to fly direct to Cape Town from Atlanta. And I think that that is a testament and a response, I think, to quite significant demand in the US market, and accounts for, you know, why the United States is one of the faster growing, I think, markets for tourism in the Western Cape. Then on just on the Port of Cape Town, I think we've done excellent work, and Glenn Steyn outlined some of that work on improving port efficiencies in collaboration with all the stakeholders in the port environment. Of course, what remains of concern, and I think is going to require significant work in the next financial year, is really the longer term, if you like, play for the port, where national government have indicated quite clearly that the intention is to bring in private sector participation in port operations. Just how that will be achieved at this stage, I think, is not clear in the Port of Cape Town, and that will be a focus area certainly in the next financial year, so that we can start to eliminate obstacles to growth in the Port of Cape Town. Thank you.
Thank you very
Chair,
much, Minister.
Yeah, no, sorry, Chair, I wanted to say that in my book captures all of the questions that were posed and responses.
No, thank you very much to both Minister and HOD and all the colleagues for those comprehensive answers as well. Members, can I just check if there are any specific follow-ups to any of the answers you've received? Member America, I note you.
Thank you, Chair. No doubt with the responses, Chair, that there's a significant amount of work that is being done within the department to develop and enhance and support small businesses and also medium businesses within the Western Cape. Now, what I have and got to know is that many departments have made significant transfers to municipalities, and often they have the same sort of objective in mind. I'm thinking here in particular the Department of Local Government, who in its adjustment budget last year appropriated about 50 million rand to municipalities for small businesses to develop business plans to assist with the alleviation of poverty within those municipalities. And so are there many other departments that make similar transfers for skills development and job creation in municipalities. So the question that I am asking is that with the JDMA, are the departments talking to each other in terms of landing the same sort of programs that aims to achieve a similar objective within municipalities? And second, I'm excited with the ECD sort of initiative, because particularly in rural areas, it provides not only an opportunity for people to have their children sort of educated in that sense, because many of our rural people work on farms and they are not always at opportunities, and there's lots of collaboration and with from the department side with various stakeholders. But what I have not heard is that within the rural areas there is possible conversation with farmers in sort of assisting with these initiatives, because many farmers are willing and able to assist, but they just need to be brought into the conversation to ascertain where they could provide the necessary assistance. And then lastly, Chair, in terms of ease of doing business and, removing regulatory obstacles and enable businesses to get off the ground and get established and be formalized. What are the experience of the department with its engagement or with the deeds office in terms of having property registered, long-term leases registered? What are there bottlenecks and delays in terms of that kind of registration? And because certainly it hampers, it's unnecessary. It's a necessary but onerous delay that's often experienced at the Deeds Office. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member America. Member Kontlo.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted, I think, on the responses I received, I've got just some specific questions, if maybe some clarity can be provided. The colleague from Skills mentioned that there's some money that they will be sending back because some sitters want them to be employers. I didn't understand what that means. And if you can specify which are those sitters and how much is the money that they are going to be sending back, and by when will that be done? And then also, Chair, I think the response, and perhaps it's a matter we can take on resolutions about this issue of the informal sector, township economy, and the like, so that maybe we can better get straight answers and be deliberate on this matter, on what is the theory of change that is being put in response to the informal sector stroke township economy, because whilst they are related, they are not necessarily the same. So perhaps one would need that so that we can, sort of discuss this in more detail. But what I would want just to get an understanding on at this point is that I remember in July last year, one had asked about the strategy on the township economy, and I was told that there was a review of a strategy that the department, a township economic strategy, which is part of the larger Western Cape economic growth strategy. Have that been concluded? Can such a review be shared with us as the committee if that work would have been completed by now? Because I think one is just concerned about more of a programmatic response to township and informal sector, which whilst appreciating the varied efforts, but one does not see how these are honed into a specific strategy, so that as a measurement, you can be able to look at it at a later stage to say, this was the intention. And when we talk about whether it's ECD today, tomorrow is SMME Booster Fund, the other day is this other, but we know exactly, as I think it is done, on skills and others, because the province have got particular sectors, the province has got a particular strategic outlook or objective that it wants to achieve. So based on that, it's able to say the reason why we're going to tourism and not going to this other one is because of the business case that we had developed and believed that these are the sectors. So I think one is just concerned about the gap in as far as the informal sector, that it's like a knee-jerk reaction, and you do not know what informs this program that is started in this year or that program that is starting in the other year. That is why even the funding, there's a funding in this year, the funding gets to be depleted, the program does not continue. So, one is trying to avoid having, these piecemeal type of interventions, but more of a strategic intervention, so that the program speaks to the strategy that at least we can be able to see over time. So that's why I'm asking, Chair, that perhaps we would need to have that conversation. But in the meantime, can I just get clarity about that strategy that was was being reviewed, whether such was concluded, and it could be that review could actually be shared with us at this point. So one, I think, is just interested in understanding such at this point as just part of my follow-ups. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Nkondlo. I'll now hand over to the department for responses to those follow-ups and some new questions as well.
Thank you very much, Chair. On the question of transfer to municipalities and the 50 million that local government had last year, so there were interactions between local government and our team under Joshua Wolmerans's leadership. But essentially that money was utilized within a local government context, and they had expended it in the way that they believed that was the sound way to do, and we gave them inputs with regards to how we deal with SMMEs on that. On the JDMA, our departments talking to each other. Yeah, there is a very, very integrated and deep discussion at the moment with regards to the alignment of work that is needed within the municipal space and municipal spaces. So for instance, there are projects that is being handled at the various JDMA levels. DDAT has got a JDMA lead within each one of the districts, and that in that sense, we bring the alignment of what is required within municipalities to what departments are doing. And of course, everything depends on, have we got budgets to be able to support that? But there is a very strong working relationship within the JDMA space and looking at an alignment for that. Member America, your comments on the ECD is noted. I think there is a noting of what happens in the rural areas. Hence, we are now working quite strongly with municipalities, and the desire is that in the upcoming financial year, our ease of doing business fund within regards to municipalities needs to be absorbed in that. But of course, discussions with the Department of Agriculture with regards to farmers is not something that we've discarded, and we will continue to do that during the year to ensure that there's alignment. Experience with the deeds office. I can go at length to say that to speak about our work and experience with the deeds office, but Michelle Ellis is our expert there, and maybe she can just come in. Michelle, would you just like to come in on our interactions with the deeds office?
Thank you, Sally. So the deeds office delays were mostly due to COVID-19, where they had to close the entire office. So the way they are structured, the building they are in, they share with a number of other departments, and therefore they are managed by a provincial COVID task team that if one person tests positive, they then lock down the entire building and for deep sanitization. But nevertheless, that was the cause of the delays. Through SOLI, we made a number of recommendations back in 2020, and since then there haven't been huge delays yet, at least none reported to us. I do receive regular communication from the deeds office. I'm on what is called the where they broadcast various messages with the stats, and today is the 18th of March. I haven't received anything or complaints about the blockages at the deeds office. Thank you, Solly.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Follow up to Honourable Member Nkondlo's questions on skills, the return to CETA. Nizam, could you probably just clarify that for us, please?
Yes, I certainly will, HOD. Thank you for the member for that question. Member, so the issue around lead company statement, when a CETA dispenses funds, some CETAs expects the dispensee to be the employer. Now, that works well in the private sector setting, but not if the partner is government. So they expect the department to employ this individual, and that individual will then be hosted in a private sector company. Obviously, we can't do that. The one seater in question is MER seater, and we're sending back 44 million rand in funds, which we already, some of the tranches we already received from them. So that's that question. With respect to other seaters, they are much more flexible. The bank seater, the transport seater, there we have a different relationship, and they don't expect us to be one. We do have a seater forum, and we have taken this up at that forum, and we intend to start a working group in at least standardizing on what the expectations are from seater. Remember, you also commented on sort of stop-start initiatives, and I know it's not directly directed at skills, but I thought I'd respond to that because skills is the one area that receives significant increase in funding in this new financial year. But instead of developing many projects, we actually reduced the number of projects and rationalized the projects to only 3 initiatives. Those are the initiatives that we know adds the biggest bang for the buck. And as I said earlier, it's currently the cheapest way of creating sustainable demand-led jobs at about 20,000 Rand a job. And whereas many of the national jobs cost up to R500,000 Rand or so to create those particular jobs. So thank you, HOD.
Thank you very much, Nizam. So, Member Nkundla, the question on informal sector township economies, theories of change, last year, the township strategy. This whole area, Member Nkundla, it is fundamentally an important part of our enterprise development approach. And as we've done this year, we've actually prioritized around 5 areas, of which enterprise development is one, and which takes into account both support to formal and informal businesses. So for us, it is a very unique and distinct space within an enterprise development space that we will continue to support. We have been working on a township strategy last year, but because we're also developing a holistic economic strategy, that work has been placed on hold in the final analysis in order to incorporate a lot of what is coming out of the overall strategy to see how we feed in to our approach to the township, to the informal and township economy strategy. So it is a piece of work that is currently being done, but the final outcomes have not yet been published. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much for those responses, HOD. Members, I'm now going to ask you to please table any other questions you have from pages 619 all the way to 673, please. That includes the annexures as well. And we're going to start that round off with Member Nkondlo.
Thank you, Chair. On page 615, on the first paragraph, I just want to check as it refers to the aquaculture sector, where exports to China were unblocked and the process of gaining market access to Russia was initiated. Given the provincial government stance in the current wave of war between Ukraine and Russia, how are then these initiatives affected, and how long will it take to recover access to these markets again for the aquaculture sector? So that is my first one. And then, Chair, moving over, I'm interested, I think, in page 624 on the priority on enterprise development. I think this issue, once again, I think on the township retail. So I saw, I think even in the presentation of HOD, there's a 1.2 or 1.3 million allocated to this particular program. And I'm interested to know how many store owners is it for the new store owners? What is this funding for? And I'm raising this because in the last, I think in one inquiry, we were told that the department contributes a grant of up to 500,000 per store owner into this particular program. So I'm looking at the 1 point something million if I got that figure from the presentation that the HOD was doing. I'm not sure whether that amount is for new store owners that are going to be recruited into the program in this financial year, or is it for other ancillary expenses, if that could be explained. But also whether the department at this point, because I participated in one conversation where one of the officials that is working on this program was party to the conversation about some of the challenges of this particular model, whether the department is aware of that. And at that point, the official was indicating that there is a meeting that is supposedly to be signed off for an engagement with Pick n Pay around this, because the latest, after the Gugulethu store, which were terminated, the latest is the one on Delft, which only within a period of 11 months, that store owner, the two ladies actually, who were the store owners there, have terminated contract with Pick n Pay. So it seems there is challenges in this particular model, if indeed the money that is being referred to there is actually towards that. Is the department aware of this, and what are some of the interventions? Because already, if government is contributing 500,000 per store owner, at least that is quite a significant amount towards the from the taxpayers' money. And then on page 657 and 660. On the consultants and professionals, 13 million will be spent on program 2 and 10 million for program 5. I just want to understand what are the specifics in terms of the technical expertise that are being sourced externally, and whether those we do not have them internally within the department of those particular whatever skills or expertise that are being sourced. And I'm raising this, also in context to the availability of such a skill within the department to oversight that which is being outsourced externally, and the fact that this is a matter that even the AG has been tracking for some time in terms of the use and the cost towards consultants within our budget. So I just wanted to understand maybe just some clarity around that. I think I will stop there on my questions, Chair, on the pages for now.
Thank you very much, Member Nkondlo. I did see Member Wenger's hand went up earlier, and I now note Member America. But just to sneak in a question as well, I've just received a WhatsApp from someone asking what would be the process of starting a call center in the Western Cape for someone who's wanting to open one in Mitchell's Plain. So if the HOD could sort of perhaps share some of that information. I think that's someone watching on YouTube. And then I'll hand over to Member Wenger, and then I think Member America. Member America, your hand went down again, but I'll give you space after Member Wenger.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not an ordinary member of this committee, so please excuse me if some of my questions might seem a bit obvious. On page 628, table 8.2, under public corporations and private enterprises, there's a substantial increase there, 236% increase to 8.3 million. And just below that, non-profit institutions sees almost 60% reduction from 32 million to 13.2 million. So I'd just like to understand what accounts for the large increase in the public corporations and then the large decrease to non-profit institutions. Then moving on to page 635. Page 635, table 9.2, sub-program red tape, also a very significant increase in the budget there, increase of 82%, and it's the largest budget that the red tape program will be receiving. I'd just like to understand what the plans are in there. And some of my other questions have already been covered. But finally, then on the annexures, page 654, table A.2, I'd just like to understand why there are no audited figures for entertainment for 2020-21, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Wenger. Member America.
Thank you, Chair. Partly covered by the previous speaker. In addition to that, Chair, that we noticed a significant increase for training in programs 6 and 7. Is it as a result of the lockdown that and now we're emerging out of the lockdown, hence the increase in training for those particular programs, and what kind of training are being envisaged for that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Wenger, is that a legacy hand or a new hand?
Sorry, I've put my hand down.
Okay, it's very strange to refer to people's hands as legacy hands. I'll now hand over to the department to respond to that round.
Chair, if possible, can I quickly just ask Member America on which page was his reference to training programs? Because I think I just missed that page reference.
Sure. Member America.
You, Chair?
Member America, can you direct us to the page number, perhaps?
I do hear you, Chair. I'm just trying to go to that page number quickly. Just give me one moment. See, it's part of the tables. Sorry, I should have written it down.
I can get it later.
We have a page table A.2.7. We have the training and development. Increases by 175.46%. And that's related to program 7. And then also table 4,000 to 405,000, and that's program 6. That's the previous table. Table A.2.6, that's on page 661. An increase of 820%. It's also for training and development. I hope I've directed Mr. Fourie to the correct tables.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I'm fine. I'm sure the CFO has also got those because she will be responding to those. Thank you so much. Chair, I'm going to go to the questions. Page 615, Member Nkondlo. So, Member Nkondlo, we responded last year to a request from industry sectors for areas that have been blocked. The agriculture sector required from us to look at the blockage for the export of pears to China, and we did that. And then there was a significant request for us for the unblocking of mussels in particularly Saldanha Bay, which was going to be used in exports to Russia. Now, of course, that happened way before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and we responded to the business at the time. And I think the reference in 615 is to the activity that the trade barrier team has done in the previous past. Of course, we have now been looking at our responses to all of this, and we abide by the decision of our provincial government with regards to activities around Russia and the support that we would give to any kind of activity at this point in time, and we abide by the regulations as given to us by our current administration. As far as the township retail spending goes, Member Nkondlo, I'm going to ask Joshua to explain there, because of course we've also looked at our budgets and we've re-established what is available in the tight fiscal space. And so we're responding to that in that regard. And Joshua, if you can maybe just explain the allocations that we have there and how we're looking to use it in the new financial year. Josh?
Thank you, Solly, and thank you, Honourable Member, for the question. So just in terms of the allocation of the funding to the township that was referred to by Honourable Member Nkondlo, it's linked to, for example, the department is going out on a call for proposals in terms of looking at supporting businesses within the townships, and it's not linked to the current program linked to Pick n Pay, because that arrangement has come to an end in a sense where we've had it now, I think, for about 4 or 5 years. So there's going to be, from a transparency point of view, a new call for proposals, but the focus is going to be predominantly on the hardware stores within your township space. So also to look at potentially then what other retail stores can be assisted in the township space. So that's linked to that. Also, sorry, I can also deal with the other question just tied to that. It's linked to the current market stores. So yes, there are some challenges, and Member Nkondlo is correct in saying that we were part of a discussion which involved both the market store owners from both Gauteng and the Western Cape. It included the Gauteng Department of Economic Development, as well as the various funders, especially your development finance institutions. What had happened subsequently, just to maybe update Member Nkondlo on that particular issue, is that the department facilitated a meeting between those particular stakeholders, including an executive from Pick n Pay linked to the franchise stores. So that meeting was held on the 9th of March, and that also included the market stores owners from both Gauteng and the Western Cape, the DFIs, and the Gauteng Department of Economic Development and Tourism. So there was acknowledgement that there was some mistakes made, I think, on both parties, both from Pick n Pay's perspective and from the market stores owners. I think some of the challenges linked to the market stores is linked to the impact of COVID-19, the issues also around the debt and the thinning profits, the lack of footfall, the fixed overhead burdens, the issues around stock ordering, and also the taxi violence and how those things impacted on those market stores and the associated profitability linked to that. What was agreed to, Chairperson, is that there's going to be a new meeting, and we're trying to facilitate with Pick n Pay on that one. So there's been an agreement with all the stakeholders in the meeting on the 9th of March. And in the words of Pick n Pay, that some of the challenges that was raised by the market stores owners are not unsolvable. And I think there's a commitment on all parties to deal with the challenges. Yes, the reality is some of the stores have closed both in Gauteng and in the Western Cape. But the challenge now, obviously, for us to ensure that whatever store is open, still remains open. So we've scheduled a meeting for the first or the second week of April this year. And the department, in that sense, will then also facilitate that conversation between those particular parties. The commitment given by Pick n Pay was that we'll deal with each of these particular stores, look at what are the challenges, and then find solutions into the challenges that has been posed. So yes, Chairperson, there has been some challenges linked to the market stores and their sustainability, but it's a thing that the department has been actively involved in and trying to assist and facilitate the process to ensure that the continued success of this particular initiative in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Joshua. I'm now going to go to, I think, Member Nkondlo's question on page 657 and 660 with regards to consultants. Now, of course, the department has significantly reduced consultant usage over the years, and we are totally committed to looking and seeing how we can remove this or reduce this to a level where it's in keeping with the amount of skill set that we have internally. But there are from time to time areas where we do need to to utilize experts in certain fields. For instance, energy is one of those fields where we may need to have a specific reference to energy experts, and there are others. So whilst I'm not sure whether in program 2, John would have all the figures on all the references to consultants, and we can certainly provide this at a later stage, Chair, to the committee. But I am going to ask Joe and John, John on page 657 and Joe on page 660, if they can maybe just respond to the question. John?
Shall I start maybe, Sunny?
Okay. Okay, Joe.
Okay, as is quite simple, we have reduced, as HOD had said, quite substantially our consultant spend. But the two major areas that we are currently using consultants is one, through subscriptions. So our research team makes use of data subscriptions that if we had to do it in-house would require dozens of economists to produce the data. And so it's much more cost effective to purchase these subscriptions, and that reflects about nearly a third of the current expenditure of the 10 million in program 5. And then this and the second is, it really is around the consultants and mainly for transaction advisors that will be availed specifically through to the municipalities, as well as through to a service provider that provides support through to private sector with regards to renewable energy procurement. So those are the major buckets. Sorry, our CFO is also just notified that that's not where our subscriptions are captured, so I apologize about that. So it's almost entirely dedicated towards the energy. Thanks, but primarily to transaction advisors that allows for the project preparation in municipalities. Thanks, Sally.
Thank you very much, Joe. John, would you like to come in yeah?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's two parts to it, and I think it's focused on, first of all, the municipalities and then also on the port, right? So maybe just to understand the role that we play in the port, like Len mentioned there, the almost leadership or facilitating gap that we play in the port is important. But what we try as far as possible to do is that where there are problems, we try and help and sort out the problems. So, for example, when there was this problem in terms of the truck booking system, we then got consultants in there, which is a very highly specialized piece of work, to provide input for us to be able to say to Transnet, here's a potential possibility, or here's a part solution to the problem. So in terms of the port, much of the interventions there will be based on getting the evidence, putting it to Transnet and saying, look, how can you actually use this in terms of improving efficiencies? Say, for example, we also done the one on the wine exports as a module, and then also on the citrus and table grapes exports. So we can better understand that logistical change, so that you can get better import and exports in terms of efficiencies. So the work that we do in the port requires, in most cases, specialized inputs, and we normally source that from consultants, whether it be from Stellenbosch University, who've got a special unit looking at logistics, or your private sector consultants. So that takes care of the port. With regard to the municipalities, now we purposefully did not go down the route of saying to municipalities, what do you want? And you know what? Sure, here's the money and we transfer it. What we are going to be doing is we are going to be doing that procurement ourselves. So where specialist knowledge is required in terms of regulatory review, we will employ those consultants. I must also mention that within the unit itself, we've got about 3 people who are legally qualified and are able to run with regulatory projects. But where the things are very specific, for example, when we gave inputs to the City of Cape Town's bylaw on advertising, we needed to get specialist knowledge in terms of in terms of outdoor advertising to enable us to actually give a decent input to the city of Cape Town. So all of the interventions is based on where we cannot do it ourselves because we don't have the requisite skills. Okay, we will then source it from the private sector and or from tertiary institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. We now get to the three questions that Honourable Wenger asked, page 6 to 8, page 635, then about the audited figures for entertainment. I'm going to ask the CFO to respond to those and to the question which Honourable America asked with regards to the increase in training. And then, Chair, I'm going to ask Nizam to respond to the question that came from a member of the public about starting up a call centre in Mitchell's Plain. Thanks, Memuna.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Chair. I think maybe just all the questions that I'm going to be responding to relates to the presentation and where our priorities is currently being or sitting in. So I think what's important to note is that as per the 5 priorities, budgets would increase or decrease according to those priorities. So if we start with table 8.2, the first question was on the public corporation and private enterprises, the 18.350 million, and that's directly linked to our Enterprise Development Booster Fund. So for next year, we will be spending 18.3 million on that area specifically. The question that relates to the 77 million, the households, the transfers to household, again, directly linked to our priority skills development, and that specifically refers to us spending our stipend money within the skills development area. Then the question that specifically related to why the red tape area is increasing so significantly, again, aligned to our priority in terms of ease of doing business. Within the red tape budget, our ease of doing business strategic priority is located, and within that area, I think as John Peters has explained, specifically we've got 3 areas, and I'm not going to go into that detail, but we've got three priorities, of which the municipal fund is probably the largest. The issues around the audited figures for entertainment, very simply, in that year it was the COVID year, so we had no expenditure on entertainment. We reduced most of our expenditure on items that we considered to be non-essential items, and in that specific year, entertainment was considered to be a non-essential item, so you won't see any spending or audited spending figures within that area. With regard to the training, both in terms of Program 7 CBMT and Program 6, with regard to Program 7, again, aligned to our skills priority, and that is where we've got training for non-employees. So the training that is located within that area is training as it relates to CBMT, our competency-based modular training program. And within our Program 6 area, similar training non-employees, and that is our tourist guide training that comes through specifically within our 22-23 year. Obviously within 21-22, based on COVID and the tourism sector not being fully operational, we've not done a lot of training within our tourism guide training area. And I think, Sally, that covers basically all the questions with regard to the increased decreases. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Memuna. Chair, the last question on this round was with regards to the starting up of a call centre. And that's a really, really good question, which I have asked Mr. Nizam Joseph to respond to. Nizam, could you answer?
Yes, HOD, I certainly will. Look, the easy bit in starting up a call center is setting up the operations, right? So that's things like finding a venue, the headsets, procuring the data, the computers, and the necessary equipment and systems that's required. Then, depending on the type of service, debt collecting financial services products may require accreditation or registration with respect of authorities. But the most difficult bit in setting up a call center is not the operations bit, but it's really signing those deals, right? And there's really two types of deals one can conclude. The easy one to sign up is what's referred to as outbound sales. That's that annoying calls you get at 5 o'clock in the afternoon while you're trying to, sort of dress your 3-year-old, selling you financial services products or a cell phone or products of that nature. Those are very risky products because typically one would sell those products, pay then a commission to the agent, but if the purchase of those products arrest payments and then the cell phone company will claw back all of those payments, but you've paid the call center agents already. So those are very challenging ones. The more lucrative ones is what's referred to as inbound call center, and there you require real capacity and capability. So, for example, calling Telkom, saying I've got a problem with my modem. Those are all dealt with not by Telkom agents, by a company in the CBD called WNS, for example. And all those global outsourced deals, those are all inbound sales. I got a problem with my flight. I want to upgrade my flight. Those are the expensive ones. But for those, you require typically 5 years, 10 years of track record. HOD, it seems like an easy question, but we can respond in that question for like 2-3 minutes, or it could take a whole day. So I'm going to pause right there, HOD.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph. Chair, I think that's the end of those questions.
Thank you very much for those responses. Members, I'm going to be guided by you raising your hands if you have any additional questions. I note Member Nkondlo. Please go ahead, Member Nkondlo.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chair. On page 629, can I just understand, I remember, I think in the first round, the HOD and I think one of the colleagues did speak about the transfers to public entities. Perhaps I missed the explanation. I just need to understand what is the meaning of no estimates, medium-term estimates for 2023, 24 to 24, 25 for Saldanha IDZ, and also the almost 12% cut in the Atlantis SEZ. If they can just repeat, and my apologies if they had already given such a response. And then on page 635, I think reading from and aligning with the 613, page 613, I think on the red tape reduction, which has been reconceived to an ease of doing business. The allocation of 23 million for that, is it the new ease of doing business? Hence, there's almost an 82% increase in the budget. What exactly is that allocation going to be spent on, if one considers that? And my last question on this one, just to pick up from the department, I think on the local content space, one of the things that has been raised, I think by Treasury and Public Works, I think are some of the challenges I think that they've been dealing with National Treasury, particularly, in terms of the designations, which they see some of the burdens, I think, on the domestic capability. And I'm just asking whether is there any work being done by Economic Development Department, particularly to look at the supply side of those requirements for those specific designations, whether is in the steel space, whether in the cement space. And I know already in the furniture has been long, so that we get to fix, because I think I understand the argument from the procurement side that both Treasury and Public Works will raise when I think such designations in the absence of a domestic supply would actually create some kind of problems. I think some of the things that have landed now in the recent triple PFA court case. But I'm just interested to know if there's any work that the Economic Development Department is doing just to understand the supply side of those designations. What are some of the challenges? What could be done in the future to actually enable our own economy in terms of the supplier value chain into those? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Nkondlo. Members, are there any other questions for that round? In the absence of any other hands, I'm going to hand over to the HOD for responses for that last round of questions by Member Nkondlo.
Thank you very much, Chair, and Honourable Member Nkondlo. Thank you for those questions. On page 629, transfers of public entities, the reduction in the outer years for Saldanha Bay IDZ is that there has been a commitment by Saldanha Bay IDZ, and I know that the CEO is on the line, so I don't know, Kashif, if you want to respond to that. But Saldanha Bay IDZ has indicated that they are going to be able to be self-sustaining from the province with effect from the 2023-2024 year on. Kashifa, would you like to maybe just respond to that?
Thank you, Solly, HOD, and good morning, honourable members and Minister. Yeah, we have communicated that it's within the agreements reached between the company, the board of directors, and the shareholder representative, which is Minister Maynard, and there's nothing on the horizon that indicates that the company will not fulfill its side of that commitment. And we are doing everything within our powers to ensure that we reach that milestone. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kashifa. Then the reduction in the Atlantis Special Economic Zone. I mean, that was also, we were assisting Atlantis to make sure that they get their designation, and that the land question that we acquired from the city of Cape Town, or Atlantis acquired, had a VAT component to it that needed to be funded, and that VAT component is that reduction. I'm not sure if Pierre Forges is on the line, or if maybe Joanne, if you want to come in on that. Is Pierre here? No. Oh yeah, Pierre is here. Pierre, would you like to just come in?
Yeah, just it relates to the VAT, Solly, you're quite right. And I must just say that we're not yet in as a fortunate position as the IDZ to be financially independent in the foreseeable future. I think with the land transfer now happening and the resolutions went off this morning, the share issued to effect the transfer of the land went off this morning to the respective board members and also to the minister. Once that is signed off, we will have the land on our books, and I think then we can start making the SEZ sweat. But I don't think we're going to see the rosy scenario of the SEZ company being financially independent in the next 3 to 4 years. I think it'll take a bit longer for us to get to that point in time. Just to add to that, sorry, but we are fully operational now. We have no excuses anymore of not being a business enterprise, which obviously we had to have to transfer the land and to start accommodating leases and investors on site. But I'm sure Joe wants to add to that as well, Solly.
Joe, do you have to come in?
No, so I think Pierre captured it quite nicely. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Forges. Thanks, Joe. On the red tape reduction, the question that came in there, what is the 23 million going to be spent on? John, would you just have to run through it? I mean, it's those five programs that we've got, but John, would you like to go through it?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Okay, look, besides the HR component, okay, just also bear in mind that as a priority, the unit is still operating as a sub-director, in other words, as a director. Okay, with a few deputies. We also have then some vacancies that need to be filled. I think for this year compared to last year, there's much more from a low base, I would say, being spent on project or programmatic interventions. So within the ease of doing business, there's two significant components. The one being the municipal support, okay, which is 10 million, and then also the Port of Cape Town, and then we have I think about R1 million allocated for projects that will look at regulatory implications or regulatory reform, i.e. stuff such as the small business regulatory amendments and stuff like that. So in a nutshell then, three main parts to it is the HR component, and then the major projects being that of the municipal support, and then also the Port of Cape Town. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. And then the question on local content and the challenges that Provincial Treasury and Transport of Public Works raised with regards to National Treasury. And yes, Member Nkondlo, again, I mean, really a good question to respond, but it has to be seen in its holistic context. And so whilst local content is one bow and an arrow, our role is largely to support these companies on their other challenges of input costs, which is a far greater challenge at the moment. So for instance, on the cement side, their logistics costs and the rail costs that they have to spend, and the lack of sustainability and continuity that they're receiving from Transnet Freight Rail are massive challenges that we are looking to support them on in the work that we're doing with Transnet Freight Rail to look for an ease of doing business area. Similarly, on the energy input costs, I mean, most of these hard manufacturing firms are really struggling with regards to, you know, how do they get energy sustainability going, and that we want to make sure that we get them to produce regularly on site. So our role as an economics department is very much on easing that side of their burden with regards to the input costs and needing and helping them to get through those blockages which are inhibiting other production factors which are inhibiting the business from expanding. Thank you very much. Chair, that's, you know, from our side, all of the questions that I think I've got down here. So I'll hand back over to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those responses. As you all know, the budget is also a public engagement, and I just wanted to check with our procedural officer, Ms. Adams, whether there have been any requests for input by members of the public, and if there are any members of the public online that would like to pose a question to the Minister and the HOD or the department. I don't see any members of the public putting up their hands. Ms. Adams, did you receive any requests for participation from members of the public?
Thank you, Chair. I have not received anything.
Thank you very much. So with that, I'm now going to hand over to the Minister and the HOD. If there are any closing remarks that you would like to make, you are more than welcome to do that now.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'd allow the HOD to go first.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'd just like to thank the committee for the questions, the oversight questions. I also would like to thank the team for all of the answers and the preparation that they've done. Again, you know, this year is an extremely difficult one for us from a budgeting and a fiscal perspective. Because we have to make hard choices. We have to prioritize, and we have to accentuate prioritization on those 5 priorities we've got, and we've got to de-escalate or deprioritize in other areas. So I really just want to thank everybody for where we are at and where we were with the budget. Also want to thank Renal Stander, the CEO of Westgrow, and Kashifa, CEO of Saldanha Bay, and Pierre Furger, CEO of Atlantis SEZ, for all of their support and for being a part of this department in the rolling out of these priorities. So thank you very much, Chair.
Chairperson, really just from my side, thank you very much to you and to the committee for the opportunity to present. We certainly look forward to further engagement with the committees, particularly during the next financial year, as we keep you abreast of our efforts to land our 5 strategic priorities. I'd also like to thank Solly Fourie, Renel Stander, Kasha Beerkus, and of course Pierre Purkis for their support and obviously their presentations during this session. I also, Chair, think if it would be very useful if you would obviously with permission pass on the contact details of the person who is interested in opening a call centre in Mitchell's Plain. I would certainly like the department to be in contact with him or her to see how we might facilitate that enterprise. But thank you very much to you, Chairperson, for the opportunity to present. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. If I'm not mistaken, I also understand that the HOD is retiring at the end of the month. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
I didn't want to put you on the spot there, Mr. Fourie, but just on behalf of the committee, we'd like to say thank you for your dedicated service. I think I remember the first time I met you was when I was still a city councillor, and it was at a high-sense event at the convention centre. So I think, yeah, you've been around for a long time, and I think your contribution to the Western Cape government and the people of the Western Cape is greatly appreciated. So on behalf of us, we all wish you very well. And we do hope that you will come and visit the committee again, and you will then also join the public participation part of these meetings again, in case you missed the department. So thank you very much for your...
Thank you for those kind wishes, Chair. Thank you very much.
With that, thank you very much to everybody from the department for joining us. It is really encouraging to have such a large delegation and such a reservoir of skills in this very important department. I do know that you are all very busy people, so thank you for joining us. You are more than welcome to leave our meeting, and I'm going to ask the members to stay on so that we can conclude the rest of the committee business. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Colleagues, I'm now going to ask if there are any resolutions or recommendations or requests for information that you would like us to obtain. Just starting off from my side, I would like, with the committee's blessing, ask that we resolve to, on behalf of the committee, say thank you to Mr. Fourie by getting him a little farewell, a retirement gift from the parliamentary gift store. If that's in order with you, we will arrange for that to happen. And then I see Member Nkondlo.
I support you, Chair, on that one. And if also possible, a condolence card to the late, I think it's the chair of, I think is it Westgrove, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the right thing to do with these colleagues that indeed have done great work to try and steer the work that we do. But secondly, Chair, can I request that we invite the department to come and present, I think, on the work of the enterprise development program, especially around informality or informal sector, as they were mentioning. Hopefully by that time they would have concluded on the strategy they say they are still busy with, so that at least we can get a better grasp of the work that is being done in that space. And I think also some updates. I think there's always an interesting space in the skills development, particularly which has got to do with, opportunities for our youth. We could ask them perhaps to give us, whether it's bi-monthly, just updates, not necessarily come to present, just updates on the work that they're doing and where they are making inroads and where they are having challenges. So I would have thought, Chair, I think that's interesting work to sort of track and follow. Thank you, Chair. Oh, yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Member Nkondlo. I certainly support those resolutions, and we will also get a condolence message to the family of Mr. Spicer. I see Member America.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, we as new members of the committee, we have a lot of catching up to do. Honourable Nkondlo is the most experienced member currently on the committee. And so we have a lot of homework in the constituency work with regard to constituency period, with regard to the acquainting ourselves with the APP of the department, etc. But regardless of that, and I think we will have quarterly sort of engagements, at least, with the department in terms of the progress reports. As a committee, I think that at some stage we need to, in our programming, set aside perhaps an inspection and briefing with the Saldanha by IDZ, as well as the Atlantis IDZ, and get some sort of not only we've done it in the past, but as a cluster, but as a committee itself, a new committee, so that we can orientate ourselves fully with the workings and the programs of these two sort of industrial zones. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member America. I certainly do support that. I think what we can do, Ms. Adams, if we can send to members Nkondlo, America, and Member Mackenzie the current draft committee program for their input as well. I know I promised to send it to Member Nkondlo, but I haven't quite gotten to it. So if you could send that so that members can also peruse that and see what's on there, and perhaps also add some of these suggestions of things that they think we should be covering. I think that would be useful. Are there any other resolutions or requests for information that members would like us to include? Okay, I don't see any hands. With that, members, I'm now going to ask if you are ready to consider the draft committee report. So I'd like to get an indication from members whether this committee supports vote 12 on the Department of Economic Development and Tourism in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B2 of 2022. I see Member America and then Member Wenger.
Chairperson, thank you for recognizing me. Having listened to the engagements and the deliberations and the feedback from the department, I would like to move that this committee support vote 12. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Wenger.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second the proposal by Honourable America that the committee supports this vote in the schedule to the bill.
Thank you very much. I also see Member Nkondlo.
Thank you, Chairperson. As the ANC would like to invoke Rule 90 not to support the vote as our minority view. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that view. So members, with that, the draft committee report would then read as follows. The draft report of the Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism on vote 12, the Department of Economic Development and Tourism in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B2 2022, dated 18th March 2022. The Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism reports that it has concluded its deliberations on vote 12, the Department of Economic Development and Tourism in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B2 of 2022, referred to this committee in terms of Standing Rule 188, and that it supports the vote referred to it. In terms of Standing Rule 90, the African National Congress expresses its minority view not to support the vote. May I get a proposer and a seconder for that report? I see Member America.
Chairperson, I move that the committee adopt the report as presented to us. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I see Member Nkondlo.
Yes, Chair, the report, I support adoption of the report as is.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, our report is then adopted. I just want to check. I see Member Nkondlo, your hand is still up. Nope, that was a legacy hand. Members, that concludes our business for today. Thank you very much for your participation and for the insightful questions. And thank you very much for Member Wenger for standing in for Member Mackenzie. And a very special thanks to our procedural officer, Ms. Adams, as well as the support staff from the WCPP, Ms. Klutzer, as well as the IT team that enabled this meeting to take place. I have engaged the Programming Authority to schedule our next meeting for the 6th of April for us to receive a briefing by the Airports Company of South Africa on the arrival and departure figures for Cape Town International Airport for the past 3 financial years, specifically also looking at the COVID recovery period, as well as a briefing by AXA on the impact of the delay on the signing of the bilateral air service agreements, as well as an update on the AXA expansion plan and the impact of COVID on their expansion plans. And the hope is that once we do have some time, we could go and visit AXA to see what that expansion plan entails in terms of changing that entire area, and hopefully fit in a visit to the Khayelitsha area to look at some of the innovations that's taking place in building that township economy. So with that, members, thank you very much. The meeting is thus adjourned, and I hope you have a good long weekend and a happy Human Rights Day on Monday.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.